In a shocking turn of events, the Israel-Hamas conflict has escalated to unimaginable levels. Over 1,600 people have lost their lives in this ongoing battle, with Hamas launching a surprise attack on Israel. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has declared a state of war, and the death toll in Israel alone has surpassed 900, most of them civilians. But the horror doesn't end there. More than 250 people were killed at a music festival near the Gaza border, and Hamas has reportedly captured over 100 hostages, including women, children, and the elderly. The situation in Gaza is dire, with over 765 killed and 140 children among the casualties due to Israeli airstrikes. The Gaza Strip faces a severe humanitarian crisis with a lack of shelter, food, and water. With this escalating conflict, can there be any hope for peace? Stay tuned for the latest updates on this devastating situation.
Israel is at war. Since the early hours of the morning, Israel has been facing infiltrations of terrorists, kidnapping of Israelis, and a barrage of thousands of rockets emanating from the Gaza Strip, the biggest and bloodiest attack in years. Tune in for our extensive and rolling coverage of the Hamas deadly attack on Israel.
In a terrible shape. I was down in the south yesterday. Scenes of apocalypse on the streets, cars burned down, bodies, and these communities, at least for now, not really a place to be in. And the citizens have been evacuated. Only those who are completely essential, they remain over there. Also from the city of Sderot, not the entire city, but the citizens over 60 are now in the process of being evacuated as well. Not that means not the entire city, but many people, all those over 60, and let's understand, many of those under 60 have already left the city. Clearly not a very comfortable place to be in. And also in the north, it's not an order for people, but in a sort of a recommendation to leave. You just heard in the previous interview, we don't know where the northern front is heading. If it is heading for something big, of course it will be. It's a war that will be easier to conduct if there are no citizens there. That is why the citizens are advised to leave. Again, it's not an order. People can stay, but are advised to leave.
Jonathan, what's an older Tulkarm area like what we are right now living? So the answer for your question is the issue is very sensitive, but we cannot put it in front of our tanks. We have to let our tanks go and roll all the way towards the Gaza.
I want to let our viewers know too.
And he met with the Hamas leaders, with the Islamic Jihad leaders, and with Hezbollah, coordinating together this idea of surrounding Israel and unifying fronts, the northern front, Gaza front, the West Bank, inside Israel, and of course Yemen and Iran. And the idea that was brought by Hezbollah was to take over, all those localities bordering the borders, and we saw that already in 2011. This was the plan of action of Hezbollah, which was repeated in front of our eyes 2 months ago. Yeah. This was this drill, and everybody laughed. We saw them,
and the tunnels uncovered some 4 years
We saw
ago,
them putting explosives on a wall that was supposed to be the obstacle with Israel. We saw them coming in motorcycles and said, "This is really it's a joke. Is it a joke?" And it's not a joke. This is exactly what was copied by the
Lebanon are saying that they are eager to join the fight, but Hezbollah needs to take the lead on this. Remember, these Palestinian factions in these large Palestinian refugee camps in southern Lebanon, like Al-Burej and Ain al-Hilwa, are eager to join the fight, open a new front against Israel. The Israeli military is saying they are on constant alert here, deploying dozens of battle tanks and other armored vehicles to the front, along with hundreds, if not thousands, of troops to help protect the area. Fears of infiltration continue at this hour as a lot of things are closed off here in the north.
With food, with essentials, clothes, anything they need. The government is now stepping in as well. We're seeing governmental initiatives as well, but it took time. It's the private initiatives that were the first ones on the ground already as early as Saturday afternoon.
Jonathan Reagan, that's just been liberated by the IDF. Nicole, again, you're some of the first people, along with the combat troops, to go back into these communities since they were ravaged. Give us a glimpse of, what you've been experiencing here in the last minutes.
David, it's hard to even explain exactly just the mass casualties that happened right here. In fact, the Israeli military says they still don't have a clear number, but I'm talking to some of the soldiers and they say what they've witnessed as they've been walking through these different houses, these different communities, babies, their heads cut off. That's what they said. Gunned down, families completely gunned down in their beds. You can see some of these soldiers right now comforting each other. Many of them reserves who jumped into action, leaving their own families behind as well, not knowing the sheer horror that they were about to come to. They say they've never experienced anything like this. This is nothing that anyone could have even imagined when you're walking through here. Baby cribs thrown to the side. Doors thrown wide open. Still some Israeli bodies still here because the fighting in this community just ended just recently. So many of these troops are still going house to house, door to door. It's taken them sometimes 30 minutes, 40 minutes because many of these houses are also still have grenades in them, booby traps. In fact, as we're trying to get closer to some of these scenes, we're being told, no, get back from some of these Israeli military because there are still grenades in the area. I want us to keep walking through, continue to kind of see the destruction that's happening on the ground here. Even something as simple as a soccer net just left to the side here as people were with their families playing. I see in the distance more bodies being covered, all the while as they're covering these Israeli bodies trying to evacuate everyone else from the territory, taking all of the casualties out of here. It's also littered with the bodies of terrorists. So we're hearing from one of the lead commanders here. It was anywhere from maybe 70 armed terrorists who made their way here from the Gaza border fence, which is less than a quarter of a mile away. And as I said, the atrocities that they committed, violence with guns, with grenades, with knives, targeting these innocent civilians inside their homes. So for the soldiers here, it's a very, very difficult scene for them as well. As I said, leaving their families behind, but they say they will continue to be here, continue to kill every terrorist who is in the area. You can hear we're very, very close to the Gaza Strip, so we continue to hear artillery firing overhead as well. Even as we were giving this tour, we were told to get on the ground and take cover because you're so close to the Strip right now, you don't even get the red alert. You actually hear the boom before you're even told to get to the ground. So this is the reality, and this is what all of these soldiers, you can see, none of them expecting this, but all of them being here, ready for the fight nonetheless, and proud to fight for their country is what I'm hearing as well. And so that's why they want to show the press, they want to show these very, very difficult images, David, but they want everyone out here because they want to see and show exactly what is happening here on the ground.
Nicole, leaves all of us speechless to see you go through there. I know that's the atmosphere around you as well. Again, you being one of the first people to move into these decimated communities now, and thanks again, Nicole, for the fortitude bringing us these frontline scenes and the dangers that you're taking on to bring it to us and all of our viewers. We'll come back to you later on still to get more updates here. That's Nicole Tzedek in Gaza.
Hezbollah for future challenges. They need Hezbollah for an event where they are attacked. So they're keeping Hezbollah intact, and this is why Hamas was sent alone to do that. Now, the U.S. understands that. This is why they're so angry. So when we see the U.S. sending warships...
Aside, steps have already been taken to show the support. On Monday, the United States sent a carrier strike group to the Eastern Mediterranean, led by the USS Gerald Ford aircraft carrier. And while world leaders' support is strong, in Canada, Greece, Spain, the United States, Chile, Australia, and other countries, protests supporting Hamas's atrocious acts are spreading.
I'm here to show solidarity to the Palestinians. They have the right to resist. Fuck Israel. Hamas is going to kick your ass. Free Palestine.
But some leaders decided not to be silent amid the pro-Palestinian protests.
Hamas terrorists aren't a resistance. They're not freedom fighters. They are terrorists. terrorists, and no one in Canada should be supporting them.
We cannot tolerate it when people try to celebrate the brutal attacks on Israel on the open street. Those who cheer this terror not only degrade the victims, they also trample on human dignity and our German constitution.
Since Saturday, protests supporting Israel have increased. On Monday, thousands gathered in Paris.
It's essential for me to be here. I would have been sick not to be able to be with the Jewish community. And not just to express my anger, my anguish, and how horrified I was by the images I saw this weekend. And for me, it was also a matter of course to be here.
Images emerging on social media from the brutal act committed in Israel's borders shock not only Israel, but the entire world.
Yeah. I'm sorry. It's very, excuse me, very difficult to look at these images.
Early morning, October 7th, as the sun is rising in the desert sky. Stars of David, they took your life, but they could not take your cry. Could not take your pride.
Wound of the Gaza front this morning as the IDF declared that they have regained control, finally, of this border region and the decimated remains of these communities in the area. And while small numbers of terrorists are thought to be hiding, the army spokesman did say tens of thousands of Israeli troops are combing that area. And as he put it, an iron wall now of tanks, aircraft, and ground troops surround the Gaza Strip. More than 300,000 combat reserves already mobilized within the first 48 hours of this largest invasion of Israeli territory in 50 years. And the scale of the attack, it's still only gradually becoming clear, with the recovery of reportedly at least 1,500 dead Hamas terrorists inside Israel. We're learning more about the shocking enormity of the initial force that breached the border, heavily armed, spreading out in very coordinated fashion into these small villages, to kibbutzes, full of unsuspecting families on a holiday morning, many with young children. And so far, while the bodies are still being retrieved, at least 900 people were slaughtered by this invading horde, thousands more suffering serious wounds in the hospital, and far too much of it clearly recorded on emerging surveillance footage or the live streams of Hamas themselves, so proud of their heinous actions. An unknown number of Israelis, thought to be more than 130 of all ages, were kidnapped into Gaza, and Hamas has already threatened their sadistic execution, one by one, if Israel dares to strike back.
Is the contributions, mostly financial, needed to rehabilitate the Israeli side. Yeah. Let's not forget the Negev, right. As well as the Gaza side. But no one is going to come in with extra billions unless they are assured that for the foreseeable future, for many years, we will not see another such shocking spectacle.
A display of a monster like this.
We're actually still moving through the community. It's starting to exit now, but I want to show you just some of the destruction to these houses as well, because as I showed you all of the destruction that these terrorists committed on foot as they bombarded and massacred this community. There were also air raids and rockets happening overhead, completely taking out buildings like this one. So it was really a mixture of everything happening on the ground and in the sky as well, completely devastating this community. Truly horrific images that we're seeing. Now, as we're leaving the community, you can see all of these soldiers here. As I said, so many of them called from their homes, jumping into action at a moment's notice. Many of these reservists leaving all of their families behind to be here to protect Israel's southern border, less than a quarter of a mile away. We continue to hear loud artillery and shelling in the distance at the Gaza border as we're walking out. So really, all of these soldiers are doing their best to protect us, the journalists who are also out here, because they want us to see exactly what's happening and what they've been witnessing with their own eyes for these past 3 days, many of them coming here Saturday night, and they knew that no other soldiers had been here yet, and so they kind of knew an idea of what was happeing, but no one could expect that it would be like this. The horrors that I'm hearing from these soldiers, as I mentioned earlier, about 40 babies at least were taken out on gurneys. Still, right now, they're going house to house, still evacuating dead bodies,
Nicole,
killed Israeli citizens who were killed
I have to cut in. It's such a shocking, jarring statement there. And just for our viewers, we're in a new hour here on the broadcast who very likely weren't with us last hour, to understand that you've come in there to find this small community littered with the dead and slaughtered bodies of Israeli civilians primarily, and you're saying 40 babies, dead babies.
That is what one of the commanders told me. And you continue to see just cribs overturned, strollers left behind, all of these doors wide open. He said, we don't know the exact number of casualties because they're still collecting dead bodies, still going door to door, because the active fighting here just stopped. He said it came in waves almost. Every 20 minutes they thought, maybe, okay, I think we finally cleared all the terrorists, and then 30 minutes later another cell would emerge. So it was ongoing, and even when they thought that it had finally ended, more terrorists popped out of nowhere, and that continues to be the scene now. It is under control now, and that's why we are allowed to come through the area. However, throughout southern Israel right now, there are still actively searching for terrorists in some of these fields behind me. I mean, you could see still just artillery completely destroying some of these sidewalks in this community, and this is just minor compared to everything that's happening inside these homes, everything that these soldiers themselves are saying. They say it is unlike anything they've ever seen in their entire lives before. The number of bodies, the number of casualties, the number of their family members, their friends who all live in these communities, it's truly horrific images that they've seen firsthand. And as you can see, still, you can hear those explosions overhead, still active, ongoing fighting over, as we're so close to the Gaza border right now, David.
Yes, this is being termed a war zone by all the IDF in charge there. And remind our viewers, I want to remind our viewers, this is just one of these small communities decimated now around. As far as you understand, Nicole, this scene is playing out over so many other communities right now around the Gaza Strip.
Exactly. I mean, as they're still looking into numbers, one of the numbers of the communities that we do know more accurately is Kibbutz Be'eri, which also not too far from here. All of these southern communities are pretty close. We know more than 100 bodies were collected from that kibbutz alone. That's more than 10% of the entire kibbutz population, completely massacred, taken out in one morning alone. So that gives you an idea of just the sheer number of casualties. But that number of casualties, as I can clearly see as we're walking through here, and they continue to find more, it is constantly growing because as the fighting between Israeli forces and terrorists is stopping, exactly, they can finally find more of those casualties, those Israeli civilians and those Israeli lives.
And Nicole, I know these soldiers are hard at work. Many of them are already in shock themselves. Have you had a chance to get a sense of their mentality? You mentioned many of these guys are now reservists who showed up quickly to that call, or even before they got the call, to get there, leaving their families, leaving their lives at home. Do you get a sense for the mentality among these guys, for the sense of determination, for what's ahead of them?
They are really just, as horrible as it is, they say it wasn't even a thought. They want to be here because for all of these families that were killed, they want to fight for all of the other families here in Israel, many of them leaving their own children behind. I was talking to one, he says he has 5 kids. He's a reserve duty and jumped into a moment's action, coming here first. He was here Saturday and witnessed the atrocities firsthand. And I said, how are you dealing with this? This is so much to unpack just for me, yet you were here actively fighting. And he says, something that he'll never be able to completely come to grips with. However, the fact that he knows he's here and making sure that all of the other terrorists in the area are killed. He says we won't stop at anything, and Israel will win this war. So that's really the message of strength that they want to portray right now. As difficult as it is, they want to show these images and show that they are continuing to fight for Israel. And as the fighting between Israeli soldiers and Hamas terrorists here at the southern border starts to hopefully come under control, they say this is just the beginning, and they will continue to fight and win this war, because now that they can continue to clear out some of these communities and regain control of the communities, that's when they can finally, as we've already heard from people like Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, really reclaim the lives lost by continuing to attack the Gaza Strip.
Nicole, great job out there. Difficult.
Compassed 6 million, 8 million, 10 million individual Holocausts. And this is what these young troopers, even the reservists, are not more than 30, 35 years old. They are now bringing back to their homes and their families, and they will never recover from the shock of seeing, taking part, and nationally being humiliated the way they were 80 years after the Holocaust. Now, obviously, all of those chiefs mentioned in your question would resign. They will not have to be pushed out. At least the military and intelligence chiefs are conscientious enough
that dignity
to understand it. But right now, they are trying to put it into an internal drawer, not think about it as much as they can, and manage the next phase of the fighting. It's very difficult, and obviously they know that they should partly blame themselves for not standing up to Netanyahu in the preceding 9 to 10 months, when he has obviously weakened both substantially the IDF and image-wise the deterrent capacity of Israel.
Yeah.
So yes, there's enough blame to go all around.
Force that breached the border, spreading out into all these communities, full of unsuspecting families, many with young children, their bodies now being recovered. Shockingly, many, many babies among them dead. Now, so far, while those bodies are still being retrieved, at least 900 people were slaughtered by this invading horde. Thousands more suffering those serious wounds in the hospital. Far too much of it clearly recorded on all the emerging surveillance footage. At this point, the Israel Defense Force mobilizing, going into action for the next phases of the war to come here. We'll cover it all closely for you on I-24 News. For now, I'm David Matlin, live in Tel Aviv. Thanks for joining us. Stay with us.